Hi, this is middle class Matt Nicholson from don'tbuythehype.blogspot.com and NC Sports Genius 1. Today I'm going to talk about basketball. It's the heart of basketball season right now. And in the ACC, things are really getting heated up. In my last blog, I talked about how the ACC refs were doing a poor job. And they were reffing with an agenda, and many times some of the ACC refs were Duke biased. Now, we've seen some events since then, some incidents that prove that I'm correct. The incident I'm talking about in particular is when Carl Hess kicked out the two NC State legends from the NC State FSU game. Now, the ACC said they had no problem with Carl Hess's judgment on it, but that he did break protocol. Now, the protocol that he broke was that instead of asking house management, since they were at state, and these were two former state players, to handle the situation, he immediately called security and took two former great ACC players and kicked them out like common criminals. I have a problem with his judgment, and so do a lot of other people. During the State Carolina game, Mike Jaminski said that we need to get past this issue, put it to bed, and that nobody was hurt, and then forget about it and move on. I think that's really funny. I wonder if he would have done that if he was at Cameron Indoor Stadium and he was kicked out like a criminal. When they were kicked out, this was the game before they were to accept an award. Could you imagine if Bobby Hurley or Christian Laettner were at a Duke game before they were going to accept the reward and they were kicked out and thrown out of a game like common criminals? So, I have a real problem with what was done and think it was handled very poorly. He was reprimanded, Carl Hess that is, but I think he should have been suspended. Mike Wilbon agrees. National sports reporter on PTI, he says that Carl Hess should have been suspended as well. Last time I talked about Mike Eads and how in the North Carolina State Duke game, that he made calls that were very similar to the calls he made in 2006 that led to his suspension. And to watch out for Mike Eads and how he seemed to be biased towards Duke. Carl Hess we just talked about. And that's one also to keep an eye out for. He's known for his Duke bias as well. At the UNC Duke game and at the NC State Duke game, both there was some poor calls that led to Duke's victory. Another ref that was at both those games, Tim Nestor. So I'm giving you some names there to watch out for. Now I'd like to recap the North Carolina State game. I really didn't see Carolina running away with the game like they did. I thought they might win, 6, 8 points, something like that, since it was at state. I didn't think, though, it would be such a blowout. I thought that Lorenzo Brown would really give Carolina trouble. He's a big point guard, 6'4", 6'5", very athletic, and I think he'll play in the NBA. And I really didn't think Carolina would have an answer for him. The funny thing was that he was outshined by Kendall Marshall, who actually had the best game that any point guards had all year, and the best game of his career. He had 22 points, 13 assists, and no turnovers. That's an NBA All-Star caliber game. In the end, though, the Heels ended up winning because of their sheer talent and size. Unlike the Duke big men, North Carolina's big men play tall. They play big. While they're not physical all the times, they are long and tall, and they shoot right over top of people. Now, with the FSU-Duke game, I really thought the refs would be a bigger factor. And I thought that FSU would give Duke a lot of trouble. In the end, I think that FSU lost because they're just not an elite program yet. And when they stepped up to the plate with everything to win, they could take the conference to move ahead of everybody, to beat Duke for the second time and sweep them. They were going to really establish themselves as maybe the best team in the ACC with a win against Duke at Florida State. And they just weren't able to take that next step. Fair is fair, so I have to say the refs did a very good job in that game. None of the refs that I mentioned before, Tim Nestor, Mike Eads, or Carl Hess, were at that game, and the game was ref well. Florida State had the opportunities and just blew it. Now I want to preview the Virginia-North Carolina game. I feel like in the end that Virginia will be overmatched by Carolina's size and talent. And I say that a lot, but actually Carolina has a huge lineup. They're actually bigger than the Miami Heat. which is incredible to be bigger than a great NBA team like that. So with North Carolina's size, they usually overwhelm people, and they're also extremely talented. Now, Tony Bennett's a great coach, and they're at Virginia. And Virginia has some great players, and so they're going to be ready for Carolina. Don't be surprised if they pull the upset. But I think in the end, Carolina's talent will overwhelm them. This is Middle Class Matt from don'tbuythehype.blogspot.com, NC Sports Genius 1. I'll see you next time.